G'day guys, it's Dan here. Last Christmas I decided to do a Christmas challenge. I had no idea where it would go to, but my aim was to try and build a functional rule set for Fantasy Grounds on Christmas Day. And fortunately I had a nice light rule set, Tales from the Loop, that I was keen on giving a go. And I completed that project on Christmas Day. Of course, after Christmas Day, I did more work on it and polished it off and made it a bit smoother and tweaked it based on some playback and some play testing. But nonetheless, at the end of Christmas Day, I had a functional rule set that did everything that it needed to do. And this year I've decided that I'd like to do the same thing. And I've threw the challenge out on Discord, and several other people have decided they would also like to try and do it. So we've loosened up the guidelines a little bit, and the aim is to spend maybe 2 days on the project. You can of course spend less, you can spend a little bit more, but the idea is to try and get something started, get something finished, get something working, and not to make this a massive monstrous task so that it's such a big job that it doesn't ever get finished, which a lot of projects like this do. You know, people start with great ambitions and with all these things that they want to get done, and the task just grinds away and takes too much time. So the idea is to throw away all the roadblocks and just say, I've got to get this done, and not to waste a lot of time on it, just dive in and get going. And yeah, I'm really keen to see what people are doing. I've decided I'm going to do White Lies, which is a espionage or spy role-playing game, and it's free. You can download it from Drive-Thru RPG, and it's by DwD Studios. They've made a really beautiful looking rule set. It's and they put it out there for free, and it looks like definitely a project worth doing. There is some complexity to it. I think I'm going to really have my hands full knocking this over in a couple of days or a handful of days, but we're going to give it a crack and see how far we get. So the first part of what we're going to do is I've downloaded the official rulebook, and you know, it's got some nice graphics. It's nice red, black, and white. It's pretty consistent all the way through. They've done a really great job on this product, and they've also done a really cool looking character sheet. This is the character sheet. You can see it's got just a black-white. They've introduced a grey colour in here, and you can see the fields here, and they've done a pretty good job of putting all the fields on here. The other one that we'd really want in Fantasy Grounds is notes. There's nowhere in here that's for recording notes, but that's easy enough to add. So I've taken this design. I've got this basic core design here that we've got. We've got some beveled edges. We've got the grey and the white. I haven't used the logo at this point. I've inquired from DwD whether they'd let me release it for free on Fantasy Grounds. We'll have to see what happens with that. And the other major element is these sort of hexagonal fields for recording numbers, and these other strangely shaped objects that sort of fit into the diagonals. So I jumped into my favourite editing program, which for me is GiMP, which is a open source version of Photoshop. Is it as good or as polished as Photoshop? Definitely not, but it is really powerful. It's a great product, and I love it, and that's what I'm familiar with. I struggle in Photoshop just because things are a little bit different between the two apps, and I know this one pretty well. So probably the main apps that people use are Photoshop, Paint.net, which is another free one. It's got a far more familiar, just straight Windows interface. GiMP, my favourite, and Affinity, who have a whole range of products that compete sort of head-on with Photoshop. Again, they're probably not quite as full-featured, but a lot more affordable than Photoshop, and they tend to run some nice specials. I have a couple of their products. But yeah, so I've got this sheet that I've made. You can see here I've started with a bunch of layers. I've just enabled this grey layer just so you can see the shape of my character sheet. So what we've got this base layer here, which is grey. These lighter grey bits in the corner here, they will be transparent, so they will not be a light grey in there. They'll be transparent. So it means I have to save this as a PNG image. I've got this frame box up here where we're going to put the name, the class, the level, a bit of information like that about the character. Up here, all of that sort of information. And in most Fantasy Grounds rule sets, this top section, and over here we'll have the token and portrait. This top section is static. It's on every tab of the character sheet. I'm going to try something slightly different in this one, and you might be able to pick what it is just now, or you'll see it later on. The other part that I've added on here is I've created this structure here for our stats, and you know what, notice it's a bit different to the official character where it's got the main field and a single secondary field. I've got the secondary field and the tertiary field, and just in my layout I experimented with a few different ways. You know, I originally had the strength, intelligence, wisdom labels up here on the right, same as they did, but when I settled on my graphic design for this shape, it made sense to me visually just to move this label onto the other side. Little tweaks, all these things are a matter of preference. They're all evenly spaced, except here the spacing, this sort of gap between these two is half the gap that is between this section, and that's just because these are your 6 attributes and these are some other stats. Very important stats nonetheless, but slightly different. So just to put a smaller gap there, and we can see that the base hit bonus doesn't have these tertiary and secondary fields associated with it. Sort of tied in nicely with the shape that I had envisioned in my mind. You'll all see how these play out as the rule set develops. So look, that was the first step for me in building this rule set, was to get a broad or at least a first draft of what my character sheet might look like. Hope you enjoy. Looking forward to the second video.